Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the October 4 Finance and Planning Committee meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Little short disclaimer statement. Official recordings, videos, or transcriptions of the HSV Property Owners Association committee meetings and/or board meetings will be done by authorized personnel only and can be viewed on the HSV Property Owners Association YouTube channel, linksforthevillage.com. Any other recording, video, transcription, or the accounts of this game are not considered the official record of the HSV Property Owners Association. So first item on the agenda was minutes from the last meeting. I can't say as I had any feedback. Anybody have any other notes from our Wednesday meeting minutes? If not,
I gave some to Tom, but I think Tom addressed all of them.
Mm-hmm.
No, I just took your comments and just made it part of the minutes.
Okay.
I made no changes whatsoever.
Okay. So unless there's any other commentary, I guess motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll
Motion
abstain
passes.
since I wasn't sure to do directly or not.
So today's agenda is predominantly, I think we managed to get through the budget activity last week and a lot of good work there.
Do we ever see admin?
Yes,
Yeah.
there's us, HR, and IT.
Okay,
Yep,
yeah.
yep. Yeah, I think that was one of the things we looked at on Wednesday. So I think we owe the board some kind of an input relative to the budget review process, if nothing else, to make the board recognize and understand the degree of support we've gotten from the staff and the degree of review the budget's gotten. Jeff was kind enough to push some thoughts out, and I apologize to you folks. I put out a version 1 of a presentation this morning with a whole bunch of blanks in the key measures table, and I spent part of the morning going and finding those key measures in the financials and got several of them put in, so I'll have to kind of give you a live update on those. I started out just kind of going major bullet items, and then started going into kind of like budget items of note, budget highlights, and I realized that pretty quickly was going to get to be a whole bunch of slides. And I just didn't feel like it's going to be a long session probably on Wednesday because there's a lot of detail that Karina's going to go through on the budget anyway. So it didn't feel like putting the board through 12 or 15 pages more slides was necessarily going to be value added because they'll probably be glazed over at that point anyway. So I kind of went back and did a reset and said, okay, so one of the things that we talked about needing anyway was some key measures associated with some of these budget lines. So I put a table at the bottom of I think it was the fourth or fifth page counting the header, that identified some of the various things that were there, and I went in and I found all of I think I found all of the stuff that was in the earmarking policy for things that we wanted to track. Yeah. So I was able to find most of those numbers in the budget line, but not all of those numbers. Or there were a couple places where there was a number there, but I didn't understand what the number meant. You know, so like, for example, the street preservation program, the street repairs for the staff, it was $60,000 of budget, and that addressed 330 tons of asphalt. And my comment was, I need a normal person number associated with that because I have no idea what 330 tons of asphalt equates to. You know, so Jason's in the back of the room. I don't know if Jason can help us with that or if that's an action to go get with Ron and find out what that actually means in some kind of a scale that the average person would be able to understand.
I'll let Jason speak to that.
Yeah.
So to come up with 330 tons of asphalt is basically, a ton of asphalt costs us about $150, excuse me, $80 per ton if we buy it at the mill and we haul it in ourselves, $150 per ton if we hire someone to go pick it up and put it into the ground. And so we basically took that budget number and kind of divided it by that, and you kind of get an idea of just how much tonnage of asphalt you can buy for the budget amount that we're proposing. Now that can equate to anywhere from a lot to a few spots here in the village where you're going to do in-house repairs on pavement, just depending on if it's a small pothole. You know, we could do 10, 20 different little potholes that add up to about 9 tons of asphalt in a day's time is about, on average, what our crews will do. And that could be one big one or a dozen little ones that kind of add up to that. So as far as being able to try to give you a number of potholes that would fix, it's relative to the size. And so I thought the most common denominator would be just the tonnage of asphalt for now, because it'd be just a wide range of spots and locations throughout the village for in-house pavement repairs.
Yeah.
Make any sense?
It makes sense. I'm trying to put on the lenses of the average villager.
Trying
Trying to understand, trying to understand what that kind of sort of equates to. I mean, if it's well and truly patchwork, you know, where you're taking up deteriorated asphalt and having to put new asphalt down, be it a pothole, be it a patch of road that's badly deteriorated or something like that. Just trying to get some kind of an idea from a scaling standpoint that the average person would understand, because I don't think anybody's going to be able to take 330 tons and figure out what that means.
Yeah, for example, your crew we'll go pick up asphalt for a day. It's about 9 tons of asphalt, and we'll patch 1 day a week. We'll spend most of the days a week preparing for that patch, and crews will go out there and one day get the asphalt and patch. And so you figure, you know, let's round up 10 tons a week. You got 30-something weeks of in-house pothole repair activity going on throughout the village, and we have an enormous list of small potholes that our staff goes after. Now, on the larger, but the street preservation program, where you use a contractor to come in there and do with the paving machine and things like that, we actually have a very detailed spreadsheet of those site locations, and you'll see that in the next Public Services report in October, where we will start presenting our detailed, itemized site location list of major street preservation repairs that are just short pieces and long pieces that contractor will come in and do, along with crack sealing and maybe some microsurfacing in the future years as well. But the little $60,000 or $70,000 that we had for in-house, I can't remember what the number was. 60,000.
60.
That is just the money it takes to go pick up that asphalt at the plant, buy one of our own pickup trucks, haul it back here, and go fix small enough potholes with our own equipment. We got one little roller, we got a dump truck, we dump it on the ground, we spread it out with a skid steer or a backhoe and roll it in place. Small potholes, we'll saw cut those things out. And that's the kind of repair that that 60,000 will address. Boy, you know, what words can I use that would mean something to you? What would you like to see?
Well,
100 potholes, 1,000 potholes?
Yeah. So let me
Something like that.
let me play back what I heard, see if this makes sense to you. Because if you're taking a day a week and you're basically doing pothole repair and you're pulling 9 or 10 tons of asphalt a day, that kind of translates in my head to about 35 days a year of pothole repair.
Or
That's kinda-
weeks, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the math that's in my head.
And that is it. You're
Okay.
right on track.
Okay, so at least from my standpoint, and get the opinion of the other folks here, I think if, instead of saying 330 tons, if we said basically 35 days a year of pothole repair, I think that would make more sense to the average villager.
Okay.
Because all of the stuff that you're getting into, I absolutely understand a pothole is not a pothole, it's not a, and a bad spot is not a bad spot, because it depends on how much material you have to use.
Okay.
But that would basically let a villager know, and it gives you the ability to very easily status that, because you can say, okay, the last month we did 2 days of pothole repair, 3 days, whatever that happens to be.
That sounds good to me. Whatever it takes to communicate better, I'd welcome the advice.
I just asked how it compares to the number of tons spread last year. Is it about the
I'd have to
same?
look that up. You know, last year was COVID, and I can't remember how much, I can't remember what we had in our budget for last year in 2020.
To me, that gives
What
some
about this year,
measure.
Jason?
Oh, yeah, that's what I
I'm sitting
meant.
here without my book in front of
Yeah.
me. What kind of,
Just one other question while we're looking up data. Did I hear you correctly in that you have kind of a list of the potholes that need to be addressed across the village? And,
we have a very exhaustive list of,
yeah, so do we know, I mean, that might be also helpful tied to we can do 35 days a year, and we have, 15,000 potholes identified in the village, so that there's some sense of magnitude of work that has to be done tied to the 35 days that are going to be done would be helpful, I think, for people that can start to recognize there's a correlation here between the two.
okay. I mean, I definitely have that data, and I can sort it out by potholes, by, shoulder repairs. I got all kinds of service requests, work orders in our
Yeah.
database that we can sort and quantify.
I just think if you were to give those types of things in October, when you talk to all this, that it makes it, people can start to quantify, okay, we're gonna work on that many days, how many do we think we're gonna get done? And then we can show progress towards those. Of course, potholes pop up all the time, I got that.
Right. Definitely going to step into that starting this next month. Anything else?
Can I take a swing at the same topic? So you have a road crew go out, they have 9 tons of asphalt, they're towing it around, they need equipment, blah, blah, blah. They got 1 day to do stuff. It just seems to me that somewhere between you can do 3 and 7 patches. I mean, 7 would seem to be 1 an hour, which seems pretty optimistic. 3 doesn't seem, it seems plausible, put it that way. So if you're talking 30 weeks, 35 weeks, maybe 3 to 5 patches, you're talking 100 to 150 patches for the year.
It could add up that way.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
And make sure you be in context here, your crews may be spending Monday, Tuesday, going out and digging up that pothole
Okay.
and saw cutting it out
Right.
and prepping it and getting it ready. So on Wednesday or Thursday, they go to pick up the asphalt and come in and patch that pothole.
Right.
And they're also kind of racing against time because that asphalt is hot when it arrives, but it starts cooling off and gets harder. So it's kind of one of those things that
Right.
the crews kind of knock out in a day, and once a week they kind of do all the prep work. So there's about it's good at least 3 days involved in the pothole whole story.
Right, right. So, I mean, but ultimately, we're trying to size 330 tons, and you're saying the tonnage itself is just step 2 or step 3 in a multi-day process.
That's very
So
true.
it's just not 1 day, you're really occupying 3 days.
That's very true.
But I mean,
That's why
I'm
weeks may
still-
be a better articulation.
Yeah, I'm still boiling down to, it just sounds to me like you're talking something in the neighborhood of 100 patches a year. And if you had a list of your critical sites and you start crossing them off,
Yes.
that's
So,
kind of what I would be expecting.
so until what happens is I have this list that says I got a pothole or a bad road issue on Fresno. I don't know how big it is. I don't know how small it is, and so we just assume small enough pothole that we don't have to use a lay down machine to go out there and do it. And we're not going to dig up the road. We're just going to clean out the dirt, saw cut it, and come back in. Small stuff, pretty much. So it could just vary tremendously on the number of potholes, depending on the size
Well-
and depth that we're dealing with.
Near to my house, there was a turn that was sort of chewed up. And they laid an awful lot of asphalt to patching it. It was not just like a patch.
I have a, I
And it was
mean,
probably a whole day just to do that one.
we do a little better, I know we're doing a lot better job than we used to. I mean, our street supervisor came from Arizona, has been doing it for 30 years. And he is doing, when he goes to fix a pothole, he fixes a little bit more than what we've traditionally done in the past. And it's a more thorough, more complete job, and we're spending a little more asphalt on fewer places, doing a better job. Where in the past, when I first got here, we didn't saw cut anything out. It was just dig it out, throw asphalt in it, roll over. It's kind of what you see out in the counties. And we've kind of upgraded to a little bit better quality because the folks here expect that better. So, yeah, that's just,
Okay.
you can talk about that all day. I love talking about it, but.
I mean, speaking for myself, I now have a lot better idea
Sure.
of the translation of 330 tons of asphalt
Okay.
to what we as villagers can expect.
So you just let me know, I'll convert that 330 into whatever term you want me to use. Number of potholes estimated, number of weeks that the staff will be spending on it, whatever you think it would best communicates, that's what I want to do.
Okay. So I had another question while you're there, Jason. It was related to the contract paving, because that number was 11,000 yards. And again, I recognize that not everything is equal, but 11,000 yards was another one of those numbers. It's like, okay, it's a big number, but what does that mean to the average villager?
So to get context on that number, you'll have to look at the detailed spreadsheet that we have that we're going to be providing with our public service report, where I've got site, length, width, depths, tonnages calculated per site, and that all adds up to whatever's budgeted for next year, and that's how far we expect to get on that list.
Okay. So you've got you basically got a prioritized list, and you know about how much volume you're going to use.
Right.
So
I could say 1,100 tons completed out per the detailed prioritization lists. See the prioritization list as part of the public services budget submittal.
well, and I think for the average villager, what would be good to know, if the number is 11,000 tons piece, you're basically going down your list until you get to 11,000. So it would be good to know how far down the list you're actually able to go. So if you got 30, if it's 32 repairs, 49 repairs, whatever the magic number is.
I can do that. That's a very
That
easy.
I think would be something that the average villager would have a much better idea of being able to say, okay, so they're gonna go out and work repairs in 35 different areas, or whatever the magic number happens to be.
And think about it, I can post that list anywhere you want it to be accessed publicly, on the website or whatever, and they can see progress as we go. And on a monthly basis, I'll be turning in that monthly progress report into the board on a monthly basis. So whatever we can do to enhance the communication, to further clarify, and make it as simple as possible for folks to understand where that capital money is going, and
Yep.
they can see the progress as we go is what we want to try to do.
Yeah, so
I don't think I can't put that on that little dashboard page.
No.
There,
But I think my only ask there is if you could go let us know what that, if you know we got 11,000 yards, let us know how far down that list you're gonna get, and just let us know what that number is. And that way, the communication to the community is, okay, we're gonna do some discrete number of repairs next year, at least that's the plan. Sometimes you get in there and you discover it's a bigger problem than you thought it was, okay, got that,
We're working on that this week to get it prepared for the next report. So, as soon as I get that I'll send Karina a draft to
Okay.
communicate with you on that.
Okay.
Can we get so many repairs out of so many estimated? Because if you've got 100 repairs and you're gonna get to 35, that tells a whole lot about what the corporation, that POA is facing, looking down the road. 35 sounds okay, but I don't know whether that's a tip of the iceberg or.
Barely making a dent.
Well, I think a percentage would.
And that's what's gonna be a
Yeah.
little bit,
Yeah.
it'll be a little bit revealing to you.
I hope so.
As you see the detail of it and you realize the magnitude of the list. Lists can be overwhelming, and I don't wanna intentionally alarm anybody. We've been doing fine with this huge list for years, and just kind of keeping the ball rolling and keeping things fixed. But it is always on our radar, whenever the time comes, whenever the day comes, that we can step it up. We already got the data to tell you exactly how we're gonna add things to the list, or how we're gonna spend more money.
I like your suggestion, percentage.
Okay,
Larry, could I ask a fundamental question about this table?
go for it.
Is the need table what version 2 of the budget would have for these projects? And the budget column is what we've currently got in the budget for these projects? What's the difference between your need and your budget table?
Close, but not quite. So the need line, if you will, when we did the look on FRADF for good or ill, we went in and said, okay, we need about 30 miles of streets. And courtesy of Ron and the street department gave us an estimate of what percentage of that was crack sealing and what percentage of that was what they called microsurfacing, and how much of it was mill and overlay. So you got an idea of how much that translated into, and it worked out to like $1.2 million in 2021 dollars. So that's like where the 1.2 comes from. The culvert replacement program, again, when we looked at it and said, okay, if we assume it's $50,000 a culvert for a contractor, for a contracted culvert, if you were gonna put a culvert replacement program together to knock 1,250 culverts out in a reasonable pace, you'd need about $1 million a year to do about 20 culverts for contractor repair, and then you'd need another $80,000 or so a year to be able to knock out the culverts, the smaller culverts that the staff can handle. And that didn't get you to a recovery timeline until somewhere in the 2030s, like 2033, 2034, but it lets you knock out about 90 culverts a year. So that, where the numbers came from, was kind of working backwards from the volume and what would it cost to do. And of course, it's all $21. And some of these numbers are relatively firm like that. Some of these numbers are a little more, I guess I'll use the phrase budgetary, because they're not quite as finely calibrated. But that's kind of where the need line's coming from.
And the budget line, does that correlate to what we have in the version 1 budget?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So my suggestion on this table, and I like the table, but I would do it slightly differently. I would have the item description the way you have it, and then under need, 1.2 million, in that same box, describe, we can fix approximately this many potholes, we can pave approximately this much street, we can put in approximately this many, fix this many cracks or whatever, and then in the budget, say, here's what we can do with the budgeted dollars, and in the next column, rather than having measure description in the next column, say, here's what's not going to get done if we don't pass the assessment. And the answer is the pothole on your street may not get fixed. There may be a street that doesn't get striped, that needs to be striped. The street signs in your neighborhood may be falling off the post, and that's not going to get fixed. I think that would, in my view, if that's what this table's trying to show, might make the point more clearly so that people can understand how it affects their neighborhood and their street and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
If that's what you're getting at.
Well, so a couple thoughts about that. I think the good and the bad of that is, kind of back to Jason's point, there's a lot of these things where we know there's years of work in front of us to really be able to catch up. Streets and culverts are good examples, but several of these other things have the same kind of problem. Being able to identify what we're able to accomplish with the budget, I think we absolutely need to talk about. I think the part that might get a little, I guess, scary is the word I'm looking for the community, would be dumping out all of the work that's already in the queue. My guess is Jason probably has way more items on his list for street and culvert repair than we could get to in the next 3 or 4 years.
Well,
With the
I think
budget lines we
my
have.
point's a little different. We've said need and we've said budget. So the need has a number attached to it. That number relates back to some projects that someone has looked at. The budget, that number, we've been over that in minute detail over the last 6 weeks or so. So that all has activity and things that are attached to it. I'm just suggesting, let's tell the village, here's what needs to be done based on what work we've done, and here's what we're going to be able to do based on this budget that we're giving to the POA, and here's what's not going to get done. And it's not to scare the village, it's just simply to tell the truth.
Yeah.
That if there's a gap in what needs to be done versus what we can do, people need to know it. And they need to be able to and I agree with what everybody else has said here. They need to translate that into I appreciate knowing that there's 330 tons of asphalt, but I think they need to be able to translate that into, we've got a list of 1,500 potholes in the village that need to be filled, and with this budget, we can do 40. That's sort of what those are my 2 cents anyway.
Yeah.
I like that approach.
I like where you're going, and I think there are a couple other realities that we probably need to explain, and I don't think it's in here right now. The V1 budget that's in here, there's a V1 budget and a V2 budget. The V1 budget is the baseline budget with the 5.8% CPI increase, the new homeowner buy-in fee, and the amenity adjustments. That is not enough to meet the need. We know that. Even with an assessment increase passed, the incremental revenue that would come in 22 would improve our position, but it's still not enough to meet the need. It's in the roughly 23 timeframe, if all the projections hold, it's roughly the 23 timeframe that you get to what I tend to call break even, which is where the revenue you have coming in and the need list and the expenditures associated with that need list start to line up to one another. And you actually, it would be 24 or 25 before you have more revenue coming in that would meet some of these minimum need thresholds, and you can start to figure out where to spend that those excess dollars. We need to find a way to be able to bring that into the public discussion as part of the presentation on Wednesday, but I'm not quite sure how to do that.
Well, I follow what you're saying, and if that's the case, if the need column really represents a multi-year need, and the budget column represents what we can do this year, I still kind of like the idea of saying, here's what needs to be done over a multi-year period. Here's how much of it we can bite off this year with this particular budget. Here's what's not going to get done, and it's going to have to be done later if there's money there to do it,
Yeah.
right? And it kind of rolls into sort of a related point, but I don't know why I didn't think about this before I was on my way over here. The version 1 budget, if the assessment increase does not pass, will the version 1 budget be the one that the POA will operate from for the year, or will it have to be further revised?
It should be the one the village would be able to operate from for CY22, because it's predicated on things that are not being driven by a vote.
Right.
Now, the bad news part of that story is it's insufficient to be able to meet all of the needs of the village. So we're still running, can't say running in the red because we're not spending money we don't have, but we're adding more deferred maintenance to the queue. Basically our carrying costs are higher than our revenues to be able to sustain the operation.
And that's
So
what
then
that
the board has to
last
start-
table shows, right?
Yeah.
That's what your table shows.
Yeah, and the board then ends up has to make some very difficult decisions at that point. Because if you are $2-ish, $3-ish, $4-ish million a year short of being able to operate, then the board will have to start looking at where they can reduce costs to be able to get those numbers more closely aligned to one another.
So I think the answer to my question is, yes, the POA could operate for 12 months using this as the budget. But if we are going to be sustainable over a 7, 15, 20-year period, we couldn't operate every year off a budget like this.
Correct.
I don't know how you try to get that into something that is a sound bite.
Yeah, it's a tough that's a tough concept to cover, that's a tough concept to cover lightly in a public presentation, but yeah.
Well, I guess the point is, this is, the version 1 budget is one more year like the last 3 or 4 years. And it is not going to cover the big red blob or whatever we're calling it in the
Yeah.
task force thing.
Yeah,
And a budget that could cover the big red blob would have to have one of two things. You either have to have an assessment increase or a radical rethinking of how we run the village.
correct.
Maybe that's what we need to say.
Well, on top of that, if you don't address the big red blob, it just gets bigger because things wear out
Well, that's right,
further.
but I guess that's the point that I didn't see in the presentation here is, hey,
Yes.
hey, POA board, here's the budget for next year. This budget is based on the way we've been running things for the last 3 or 4 years. As you know, we've got a big red blob out there. This budget does not address the big red blob, and if you operate on this budget, the big red blob is just gonna get bigger.
Okay.
I guess I'd like to put one little asterisk on this discussion. 2022 is going to be an unusual year because we happen to be dragging around an unusually large amount of cash. If you look at our capital budget as written, it's $8.5 million, which is preternaturally large. And if we don't get some kind of intervention, 2023, the 8.5 will fall off a cliff.
Right back to the.
Right back to wherever the heck we were
Which is around
before.
4 million.
Yeah, we were at 4 million last year,
Yeah.
4.4, and it'll
Correct.
probably look a lot more like 4.4 in
Right.
'23, barring some dramatic
Right.
change.
So 22 is an unusual year in that we'll get this little sugar rush,
Yes.
but we can't get giddy about it. It's like, it's a one-time shot. And
Historically,
spend-
that would not follow through.
Right.
It's
I
a
mean,
one and done.
My only comment is spend it wisely. Don't be in a rush to spend it all. And maybe we'll get the assessment increase and then we'll be happier. But just word of caution from where I sit.
And to that point, that's why last week I stressed that we need to make it very well known that this is an anomaly year. And if it was not for our cash position from this year, we would not be sitting as well as it looks right now. So while they may look at version 1 and say, well, this addresses a lot, why do you need anything? They need to understand that is not our normal procedure.
Yeah.
And a lot of that cash came from the fact that expenses were really cut last year. It was,
PPP, expense rollover.
For
There
20
were a
and
lot of-
21.
There were a lot of things that happened that drove that carryover. But- So I don't know what the batting order is for Wednesday's meeting. So obviously, I think this is a topic that both of us are going to have to hit. But I'm not sure who's up first and who's up second, so I don't know how hard to hammer that point.
Actually, I was gonna ask you guys what level of depth you guys felt we needed to go on Wednesday. And I figured maybe we could try to work up a plan together as far as our agenda.
Perfect. Okay. So I kind of like what you're saying for, because I wrote notes to self here, that street preservation program was a target of 30 miles a year. The pavement marking is also 30 miles a year, conveniently linear, and makes sense. The street signage was 60K, and it's about $200 a sign. Based on historical data, it's about $200 a sign, so that works out to about 300 signs a year. That sounds good, but there's 17,000 road signs in the village. So you're knocking out about 1.5% of the signage in the village on an annual basis. So it's going to be a while before the last of those road signs gets refreshed. But that's one of those things that the road signs last a long time too, so maybe that's not a bad thing right now. But I came up with, so basically I came up with, I don't know if I'd call it 35 days or 35 weeks for staff street repairs. The contract paving, it's kind of X-specific repairs until we get a data point on that. The crack ceiling was 115,000 linear feet. That made sense to me. I mean, I don't know the way to show that. The pavement marking was 30 miles. That was 60K, excuse me, 120, pavement marking 120K. Did I have that right? No, it's way less than that.
I don't have it in.
No, you're up, it's right up there. It's about the fourth line down.
Pavement marking?
Oh, there it is. Long line, 100, okay, yeah, 120,000 there. And that worked out to about, looked like 30 miles. I think that was the note that was there.
The note's on my other sheet, it's not on this one, so
Okay.
I don't know.
So those I understood. The only other real question I had was in the culvert, well, I have several questions, but in the culvert program, it was 60K for the staff, and it looked like, the note I saw was like 6 to 10 replacements of 18 to 36-inch culverts, I think that was.
I mean, to be honest with you, that's just a place marker for a budget line item. We're talking, and that's, when staff goes out and replaces one culvert, one 18-inch, 24-inch, that pipe alone is around $5,000 to $7,000 just for the pipe. And then you got to figure in the cost of replacement materials and pavement on top of that, and then striping on top of that. There's a lot of things go into it. So you're talking anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 probably per installation that the in-house staff will be going after, those small culverts. So it doesn't add up to much, $60,000. When you get serious about doing a culvert project, we'll be talking millions of dollars.
Yeah, I got it.
Is when we get serious about that.
Yeah, my note on that, my note to self on that was that 6 to 10 felt small, but understand.
It is. Of course, now the version 2 adds several $100,000 to that.
We added
Okay.
250, I think.
And then the contracted culverts look like the 450K. We're still using 50K of culvert as kind of a mean number.
So it's very site dependent. You know, a DeSoto Boulevard culvert, anywhere from $50,000 to $125,000, depending on the depth and the pipe size. But we do have other culverts that are much smaller than the ones we've kind of replaced this year. And so hopefully we'll start looking at those smaller, less costly culverts. So they are a little bit bigger, a little bit more costly, anywhere from $50,000 to $125,000. And again, you know, we're just knocking out a few a year at that rate. And so we only need to focus on the ones that are very serious, that have the potential to be catastrophic failures. We don't have the luxury to get past those yet.
Okay. And then I found a line for water line replacement. I think it was, well, it says replace water main. I don't know if it's replace water line. That was like 70K.
Yeah, that is a place marker for every year. We're always having a section of water line that we're going to fix or something. For example, at any one time, we've got 5 water mains that are on our radar. For example, the one on Galleon, Gancho, Brillante, Ponce de Leon, which we hadn't had a big break this year, but routinely, the one on Ponce de Leon, the 14-inch, usually blows up this time of year. And so we've had 3 or 4 repairs there on that. And then Asturias is one that we've actually gone out for bids for this year, and we're going to be placing 1,000 feet of that in an area where we've already had 4 leaks this year. So something about that pipe is disintegrating and coming apart, and has warranted going ahead and going in and doing a massive repair on that. But we do have other water lines that are on our list that are further out, that cost a whole lot more. That if you look at the 7-year plan, we've got those as part of our master plan, where we've got some foreign pipe materials that we need to replace. We've got loop connections where we've got two lines, but they're not connected. So when this subdivision only has 1 feet of water in it, and I've got to fix a water line, I got to turn off the whole subdivision to that area. But if we're complete some of these loops, I can isolate a little better and have fewer people without water when we're fixing a repair on those things. So those are the things that are on our radar for the future. That 70,000 though is for the short sections of pipes that we know are going to disintegrate every year. And we got 5 water lines right now that we're just kind of watching, monitoring, and when we sense it about to go just collapse, we're going to try to replace it that year. And this year's Asterias.
So do we have anything in the budget that's actually proactive versus reactive for water and sewer line replacement?
Well, it's a combination of both. Proactive is like, I've got a lot of AC pipe, asbestos cement pipe. And as long as that pipe is not been disturbed, it's good solid pipe. But in some places, that pipe has been repaired or fixed, or it starts getting frail, and that pipe does have asbestos in its construction. It's just part of the strengthening device. It's great pipe, works great, but a lot of companies are slowly replacing that. That's a proactive nature, just because we're trying to get a pipe material changed out with a more contemporary material, and it's also a brittle type material, so it is subject to, if you got ground movements, it's subject to having more leaks. We have not had that problem here in the village with that type of pipe material, so we're not going after it proactively. Doesn't warrant it yet, but we've got it on our radar. We do have a line like on Via Harrell, that we know has been leaking for a while, and we've been watching it. It has a foreign, weird type of pipe material. It's a fiberglass wrapped in PVC. I've never seen anything like it. It's hard to get parts to fix it. It's just that came out, and somebody bought miles of it and put it in here in the village, not knowing that 10 years later we'd never be able to fix it or have parts replace it. So that's a proactive thing that we're going to be doing next year, or start that. We're going to start that in 2022 and finish it in 2023. It's a $150,000 project. It's only fixing a section, the problem area. So we have a few of those on our radar. Not a lot, but the other ones are much, much bigger, and they cost a lot more, and they're way out there on our 7-year plan as monitoring and just kind of keeping that on our radar.
Well, I have to admit, I struggle to find a line item that I'd call proactive water and sewer line replacement. And there's some budget lines in there that look like maybe there's a little bit of that embedded in there somewhere, but it's not abundantly clear that there's anything that I'd classify as proactive. I mean, what you just discussed a couple minutes ago about you've got a line that said 4 leaks this year. Well, okay, that sounds like a proactive repair, but there's really nothing out there for dollar figure, and there's nothing really out there for what does that translate to for that dollars? Because I recognize, depending on the size of the pipe, the costs differ and all of that kind of thing, but one of the philosophies used associated with the FRAD-F outcome, for good or ill, was that there's a lot of pipe out there that's been in the ground a long time. It's starting to fail. It's aging out. We really need something somewhere that talks about what we're doing about those kinds of programs. Even if it's not large dollar initially, it's one of those things that clearly it's something that needs to be done. There's hundreds of miles of line underground, a lot of it 30, 40, 50 years old. If it's not a problem now, it's going to become a problem in the near future.
And that's the big question. When will it become a problem? I mean, the PVC, AC pipe, ductile iron, given the right soil conditions and the right installation practices, can last for 100 years. Counter that, if it was installed wrong, had rocks against it, the ground's moving in that area, it can accelerate the fatiguing and accelerate those repair costs. So it's really to try to be proactive. It's hard for me to say, well, I know that's a water line that's been in the ground for 30 years, but I hadn't had a problem with it yet. How do I plan to do anything about it? It's kind of a hard question to ask unless you starting to experience the signs of fatigue are the signs of the problems. And then when you start getting those signs of leaks in the area, then you have a little bit of time to start planning and replacing that line. That's, I guess, that's kind of our philosophy right now about water lines.
Well, but correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you've got water and sewer lines that are exactly in that state right now.
I didn't hear you.
It sounds like you have water and sewer lines that are exactly in that state right now.
We do.
You know, you got
do have a few.
you got lines with lots of leaks. You've got both water and sewer. What's the plan to deal with those?
So, until we can afford to do, $500,000 replacement jobs, we're very good at fixing it with clamps and things like that. And so, eventually, when you put enough clamps on a water line, you need to go ahead and replace it. Tracking that information is something that we need to get a little bit better at. We do have a database of where we have done repairs, and I don't have that in a way where I can put it up on the GIS yet and say, oh, look, this Ponce de Leon has had 20 repairs over the past 5 years, and I can see the little locations on it. I don't have that yet, but we can get to that type of data, seeing what the history is on that line, and saying, yeah, this thing is clicking off a leak every year. My bottom line answer to you is we got more work to do in that particular area about being able to be projecting or forecasting type of certain line repairs, but it's very easy to be reactive right now based on the science, based on the fatigue, based on the deal. We don't have a whole lot of water lines that are giving us too many problems. I mean, we get the small leaks every day or the big leaks every day. We're pretty good at fixing it. And so that seems to be sustainable to some point. But eventually, you're right, those leaks are going to grow as your system gets older and circumstances change. Eventually, you're going to need to replace some lines. And I don't have really any more data than that, other than what I have on my last master plan, where we know we've got the form materials, we know where we've got 5 lines here, we know they have a lot of leaks every year that we're watching, and we know where we have disconnects where we want to loop the system. It's kind of those 3 areas that we're kind of focused on. And then eventually we'd like to change out some of that foreign pipe material. That's millions of dollars for a water line that is foreign material, but we need to change it out. Like Via Gerald is the one with foreign material. We need to change that out when we can in the spots where we know are leaking.
So let me scratch at that 5 lines with lots of leaks comment. So that implies you got 5 lines, you know they're bad, you know how many linear feet of it's there. What's the plan for fixing it? We're sitting there staring at it, admiring the problem, isn't going to fix it.
Well, I mean, we can stretch that dollar pretty good, but like for Asturias, we're going to spend as much of that $70,000 we can to fix it, and it won't fix the entire line. Mm-hmm. The only limitation we have is funding and the cost of that right now. I guess is the best way I can explain it. We don't need to take our eye. We need to keep our eye on that and start planning to replace more of that, especially now that we're arriving at a little bit financial capability in the utility department. We can do more of that, and we're looking. Those are some of the things that we're looking to do more in now that we're starting to get more funding available to go after the sewer I&I problems and the water lines that need to be replaced.
So it sure feels like probably not doable in a 22 budget from the sound of it, but it sure feels like for the lines where you know you've got problems. I know you can't predict. There's trying to be able to predict what's going to fail 2-3 years out. Yeah, good luck with that. But for the stuff that you already know is bad, it sure feels like when we get into the next budget cycle, we need to take that line replacement program and we kind of need to break it into 2 pieces. You know, there's the normal day-to-day maintenance, got to go patch the pipe because it sprung a leak. Okay, got that. But then there needs to be a piece of that puzzle that says we're going to allocate a certain amount of money. We're going to prioritize these 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever the heck they are, lines, because we know they're bad. We know we need to replace them. and go figure out how much money will it take to replace how much line, and start a program to actually start dealing with those things.
I agree. I think we have arrived at that point to look at it from that point of view now.
Okay. Okay. So the only other question I had, and it just was because I couldn't find it before. I know we couldn't find it before, and I'm not 100% sure if it made the cut. There was the roadside clearance and view safety line, and I know this got moved from one department to the other, and I'm not sure where it ended up and
Is that
how
common
much money
property?
was in it.
Common property version 2.
Ma'am?
Common property version 2
Okay,
for 30,000.
okay, okay. So it's in V2.
And I think I can squeeze it back into version 1. I just hadn't had that time to go back and add that.
Got
back.
it. Okay. Thank you. I think that dealt with most everything I had notes on in Jason's world.
Oh, great questions. Very good questions. I really appreciate, taking a look at it, and we will be glad to work on those areas.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate your patience as us trying to get educated.
I appreciate the team. It's a team effort here.
Well, if you want to stick around while we go over version 2, you might be able to speak a little bit to where we put those additions as well, if you don't mind waiting around,
No,
unless
I'm
you've
not
got
going
somewhere to go.
Yeah, can I just, you want me to sit down or stay?
Yeah, you can sit.
Okay.
So just an apologies, I should have sent version 2 of this out. What I found all the street preservation items, they were up here in the chart. I found, for culvert replacement, I found $60K for the staff, $450 for the contractor in the V1 budget. Water and sewer line replacements look like maybe they're still a work in progress. IT upgrades, I found $71K, and that was 2 servers and cameras from the looks of it. Looked like about 4 or 5 individual line items there. In fleet, if I did the math right, it was 14 vehicles and just under $1.75 million. And the big rocks in that one was $400,000 for the fire truck and $240K for a commercial trash truck. And then everything else looked like it was kind of per schedule. Water and sewer upgrades, I counted about 12 major pieces of equipment. That included things like the transition from chlorine to sodium hypochlorite, a couple of clarifiers, several pumps, several filters, and a few other odds and ends things. But that looked like the bulk of the dollars. And in buildings, I had about I found 257K. It looked like 11 roofs, 4 repaints, and there was one other item on there. I can't remember what it was. Yeah, but they were all.
Did you include
There's
HVAC in
2
that?
additions.
Sir?
Good.
There was also 2 additions under the building. One was the bathroom addition for the streets department, and then the storage addition for the fleet department.
Yep. Thank you.
And there should have been an HVAC line in there.
Yeah, there is an HVAC line in there, and it appears, if I understand correctly, that's kind of it's a budget line, and it's opportunistic. If the old Freon systems fail, they go ahead and replace them, as long as they've got the budget there to do it. You know? And hopefully we get toward late Q3, early Q4 next year. If that money hasn't been consumed, maybe we find a target and go ahead and replace it proactively. That pretty much filled out all the data I had on this table to this point. So the interesting part is, how do we shape this for presentation? I'm assuming, it happens when you assume, it's a dangerous thing to do. I'm assuming that basically what you sent out for the budget information last night is pretty much what you're going to cover with the board?
Yes, so that is the packet that would typically go out. All the information and the spreadsheets that we have been going through does not get delivered. And so that's where my question was coming into play. I tried to rework that main packet to include most of that pertinent information as far as capital and all that. But I don't know if you guys want us to go through department by department and then go over the roll-up, or if we think that there's enough information in the roll-up to cover it there and then maybe just dig in for specific questions. I don't mind doing it either way. I'd just let you know, if we do go through department by department, it will be an all-day event.
Yeah, it's a lengthy one. I was able to use the summary that you sent out last night to be able to go find all these other numbers. So that's probably a pretty good litmus test for the information being in the package.
Well, and that's where I tried to, so each division summary tab, I included all of the capital purchases under each one, so that you didn't have to go anywhere else. Then on the strategy report, I believe, under the deferred maintenance, so like last year we had like 4 or 5 just small items. I would say small, they weren't small, but 4 or 5 items detailed. So this time I went through all of our capital and I picked up everything that was either a repair or a replace. And I included them there. It's not all inclusive because I didn't pick up the new equipment for the new crews to be added, that kind of stuff. Just truly more of that deferred, or maintaining that deferred backlog.
Just out of my own curiosity, because I didn't remember seeing that when I looked through it this morning, how much did that total? We had some deferred stuff, but I don't know what it totaled out.
Well, I didn't put the dollar amount on that summary.
Okay.
Let me just pull it up and I'll. Make sure so here's my one with some fixes this morning. So here's where that list starts, and I put the asset type as well, and categorized them that way, so hopefully you guys could get a little bit more information.
It was the incinerator I was forgetting too, in buildings.
Oh, yes.
It was some.
So it comes down, you've got a page and a quarter of just those items. But then if we scroll all the way down before the fees. Oh, and here's where as I said, I added every capital line item under each division. But then this is all capital period that is listed here with the total amount, which came down to $8,550,996. So I think this has quite a bit of that information that we would want to cover in the budget review. It just, I don't know, like I said, if you guys would like for us to go into a little bit more detail on the expense side. I think capital is pretty well covered in all of this.
I have a feeling, I'll throw my opinion out there and let other people weigh in. I have a feeling by the time you get through the end of this package, most people's eyes are going to be pretty thoroughly crossed.
Yeah.
I think if you try to take them any deeper, it's going to be really hard for people to follow along.
Yes.
There will be dumb questions. You ready for those?
There's no dumb question.
I keep saying that. I'll try harder.
How much time does the board have budgeted for this? I mean,
I don't
or
know.
does it matter? Is the discussion open for as long as Karina and Larry want to present, or is are you giving them a certain amount of time to do this?
I haven't seen or if I did, I've forgotten, the agenda. This is obviously the biggest part of the agenda.
Well, I was just curious, because I
I
mean, that would
think
kind of
about 2
tailor what
hours.
you guys,
You know,
do.
I think it's about 2 hours. I believe that there's another meeting at 11
I
for
think you're
the
right.
policy review, I think.
I'm just, I approach this from the standpoint of the common person, I keep saying that, and what they're gonna want to see between version 1 and version 2. And subtracting to version 2, just going to the last few pages, the capital expenditures, the version 1 proposed version 2, you say the version 2 increase is 950. If I subtract the two numbers total, I come up with 920. Not a big deal. Probably my subtraction. But I thought there's going to be about an extra 2 million in assessment revenue.
Well,
I think someone's going to want to know where that is, just a summary of it. The 950 or 920 versus 2 million.
well, and part of that to realize is version 1 has a 5.18% increase in it.
Okay.
So when you're saying it's a $2 million increase, your version 1 to version 2 does not equate to that. You'd have to back out that 5.8 to get your $2 million difference.
So there's,
It was
somewhere in my math,
roughly
somewhere around 3/4 of it.
1.724 is what I
Okay.
had come up with, and then I'd added an additional $350,000 in bad debt.
Okay.
That is just an
That
assumption,
accounts-
because I don't know how that effect will take place, but I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Yes,
And that equates to about a 1 month's
yeah.
adjustment anyways.
In my head, that brings us very close, but I think or in presenting, that needs to be drawn out to me. That'd be an extra table for John Q. Public. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think you've got to explain what the additional money is between the 5.8 versus the assessment increase, recognizing we're not complete with the assessment increase, so we need to explain that in the narrative, and we need to say, okay, so given the fact that we're gonna have a little bit more money than we had if we just went with 5.8, what did we spend it on?
Well, and that's where I've tried to kind of highlight, and I still have a little bit of work to do, to come up with something kind of like what you're showing. But like in the email that I sent, and then let me pull this up.
what, about 1.7 additional, is that what you said, Karina? Between V1 and V2 is a little over 1.7?
Yes.
Well, I think you need to be able to explain in more detail than that, because it's actually more than that, but then you increase the debt,
Yes.
okay, because of people defaulting or whatever the case may be, and you need to explain that, otherwise people are just gonna look at the raw number
Yeah.
between the two, and it is about $2 million.
Yeah.
Through 37 to 39 million. Okay, that's what they're gonna do. They're gonna do the quick math, that's 2 million. Why is it not 2 million in improvements?
Well, correct. So let me walk you guys through, and then you guys can tell me how you want me to present this, okay?
Cool.
So after the $350,000 in the bad debt, we're looking at a net difference in revenue of the 1.724.
So
Then-
Karina, before you go past the 350,000 in bad debt, how did we come up with that number?
My 350? That was my guess. So I just said, it was a guess.
What does it equate to? Or was it truly just a guess? Was there X number of lots are gonna default, or what?
No, it was a guess.
I think if you just do the arithmetic for 1,000 lots at $500 a lot, that's $500,000. So the assumption is less than that, and then they're not all going to default on January 1st. So it's kind of a swami number. I mean,
It takes a year
it
before they get to
seemed
that point.
kind of reasonable but conservative. I thought it was conservative, But that's kind of what I ran through my head.
See, and you won't really see that until 2023.
They'll really hit, well,
Because
the
it,
thing
once
is,
it
it'll just keep
gets a year
piling up.
old, then it comes into this calculation.
Right.
So what you're gonna see in '22 then, following that logic, is you're gonna mostly see the impacts of the Commissioner of Public Lands activity from this year, both ours and outside parties?
That would be in version 1.
Yeah.
This is in addition to that adjustment.
Oh, okay, okay.
I think it would be easy, for me anyway, to stay with, we'll have 2 million of extra income in version 2. Just the $20 a month and the $3 for non-residents. Then saying less 350 bad debt, an assumed number or whatever. Less the amount that would be due to assessments with the 5.8. And then come up with a number, that one would be around a million, a little more than that, slightly more than that. And then that, to me, that number, a million, minus the capital amount, what's spent in version 2 on capital of 950, and the difference between those two.
Yeah, I want to, just from memory, so I could be wrong, but I want to say the difference between, once it hit to the 5.8 and with the assessment increase, it's a difference of 1,024,000, something like that. It's
So
on
we're
my
within-
spreadsheet.
We're within 50,000 just from those. But I think that would be worth a table, to me, for the people who won't follow the rest of it.
Yeah, I will definitely put together a
Something like
walkthrough
that,
piece
okay.
for it. I have no problem doing that.
Maybe it wasn't that dumb then, thank you.
And here's where I wanted to show you guys. So on this sheet, I have highlighted green the items. Well, first, we'll get the verbiage update for version 2, because it would obviously be different metrics. But these items are where we have put extra funds in.
You might have gotten the answer, Jason's answer there, that's at 45 sites on that 11,000 square yards, 11,000 yards.
And then,
So,
That came off the spreadsheet that I had, the detailed spreadsheet.
Okay.
um,
Let's say it's Jason in action item, he's already in there.
and then, did I save it? Bear with me. Let's see. Save it here, yeah, capital B2. Now this, I still need to go in and add the bunkers, but we'd actually modified this a little bit this morning.
okay, but I'm gonna stop before we get
Okay.
into bunkers if I can. Because if I look at the OMT, bunkers weren't until 24. I don't understand why they're now in 22's budget.
I was asked to put them
Hmm?
There was-
just-
That's true. I don't think they were in 22.
No, they're not. I'm looking at it right here.
Yeah.
They were in 24's budget. This is a 2-year increase. I mean, I like it or not, I know, but at the same time, this is where the discipline has to be in the system. And I say, in 24, you can do it. If you want to do a across the year thing, okay, great.
No?
But I think pulling it forward, and I'm sure there's lots of good logic and lots of good rationale. Now's not the time.
Well, I think more to the point, if you've got $500,000 in 22, do you want to spend it on a bunker rebuild? Or do
No.
you want to spend it doing some of the other things that we know need to be done?
Right.
And that are already on the OMT.
I have no issue with that.
You know, that's where I'd go back to the Bolero water line replacement and go,
Yeah.
why aren't, it's on our list under public utilities in the OMT, and it's been deferred for years to replace it, boom.
The only question I do want to raise in regards to all of that is, my understanding, and here's where I was unassuming, is that we were not allocating any of the assessment increase towards utilities because they are in a position to where they will be funding themselves, and it was the areas, the rest of the organization that were to be addressed with those funds.
Okay.
So my only comment to that is, public utilities money goes into the general fund anyway. If you don't want to call it that public utilities paid the bill, it's still going to free up $500,000 to go do something else. You still do the public utility Valero replacement, call it that came under public utilities funding if you want, but it's really magic because it's all general revenue and we're just allocating it differently. And then put 500,000 more towards streets or whatever.
I can shuffle, that's what they've been doing, the shuffling, that's why I have 30
But that's the
million
way
lines
we-
of tracking it, but that's
Yeah.
fine, I'm just asking.
But that's been the conversation all summer. The utilities, the streets need to be updated, corrected, or repaired, whatever word we want to use. And then the future plan is these other things. So Jeff has hit the nail on the head.
Like I said, I have no preference as far as the bunkers go. That can be removed. My question was pertaining to, do we come back into a we owe you, you owe us situation? Because we've just eliminated that as of 21. I don't have a problem doing it. I just wanted to be able to identify, does the assessment increase funds get spent where it needs to be spent and we just keep tracking it that way, or do we try to let utilities cover the utility side? Either way.
Well, even if you don't address it in the utilities domain, you've still got a lot of public works opportunities. You've still got streets, you've still got culverts, you've still got opportunities there.
Okay, well, let's forget the whole bunker piece for a moment. Okay.
Get out of
There's need out there. I'm just saying, I don't know that, it would be that neat.
No, there's definitely a local rule at Granada involving picking rocks out of your lot before you get your
And
shot.
I played there the other day and I picked rocks. I got it.
I got it.
Right.
I'm with you.
But I do want to go ahead and go over the other adjustments on the B2
Okay.
budget.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
sorry to hear it.
Where were we before I was interrupted?
Bear with me, let me grab my bearings for a second. All right, Public Works. Just because we made some changes, so I'm coming in here to show you guys. So we had added staffing and we'd added equipment to the streets department, but we did not put the money from the assessment increase in the correct category for them to actually have something to do. So I originally put the extra $500,000 in the culvert, or the street preservation program, which is done by general contractors. So got with Jason this morning and said, try to realign some of that. This added crews are for culvert, or the added crew is to be dedicated towards culverts. So that being said, we backed it down to $300,000 addition from the assessment increase to the street preservation program. And then, did I update it here? Now, let me just go here.
Air conditioning's not.
Okay. Bear with me.
That'll make it a little better.
Feels quite a bit cooler, as a matter of
Yes, it
fact.
certainly does.
Yeah.
Okay, so $300,000 to the street preservation program for an overall budget of $1,050,000. Sorry, I know that's a little small.
No, you're okay.
You're fine.
And then 290,000 added to the culvert rehab. So that equates to 350,000 for the adjusted budget.
Okay.
Which, Jason, how many did you said with 350,000 on the culvert for staff, that would cover around 50 to 60 culverts? Is that correct, or am I misspeaking? Roughly, as it all depends,
At least
but.
30 more.
I think if you average $10,000 a culvert, that's at least another 30 culverts that staff can put in. And that price will range, it'll be plus or minus a little bit,
Gotcha, okay.
based on actual field conditions.
Okay.
The other, thank you, Jason.
And that's in addition to 7 more head count? So you'll have both the material and the
Correct.
manpower to,
Yeah, the strategic crew staffing position we're trying to be in is have one crew or 2 crews dedicated to fixing culverts. But with that type of budget, there is really, it's enough for one crew to be focused on budget, on culverts, and one crew focused on roads.
So it's just how best Ron chooses to allocate his resources.
oh,
And
okay.
that changes on a daily basis depending on if folks in sanitation show up or not, so.
Okay,
It's one of
prior
those
to
things.
version 2, you had 2 road crews in total, 1 for culverts, so this will bring you up to 4 road crews. Okay, I'm good.
4 main crew.
So I had a question on the preservation program. The 300K added, I get. The 600K approved from 2020.
Yeah.
I see it in the V2 budget. Is it also in the V1 budget and it's
Correct.
just not showing?
The comment is there in both. Here, I don't have that one saved on my desktop.
That's okay.
All right, so capital. And I don't have it highlighted here. Let's see. They're sorted this way. I thought I was sorted.
You're right in the right neighborhood. I saw a
There, here we
phrase
go.
in there somewhere. There you go. About 3 down. There you go.
So 750. So that included the 150, that same as we budgeted last year, or this year,
Okay.
plus the 600,000 that they approved from the unexecuted funds from 2020.
Okay. So,
So 750 total.
okay,
So-
that's cool. Somewhere I pulled 450. And I don't know, may have been my bad.
Well,
I
the
thought-
450 is the line in the
That's the,
budget.
Yeah.
well, the street preservation program shows 750.
Okay, that was my
The
error.
culvert rehab shows 450 by general contractor.
Okay, that was probably my bad. Thank you. Okay, so the contract paving is, that gets you a pretty good ways toward the $1.2 million, even without V2 in the budget. That's goodness. Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
And then we already said
290.
the
Yep.
290 in addition to the 60 that was
Mhm.
budgeted for this year.
Yep.
And in version 1 for the culvert rehab.
Mm-hmm.
We've also, and this was not in your 7-year O&M, but this is the point of sale software replacement that is being pushed to change our software over from Total E. So what I've done here is I've added half of it at year end, and then the other half would come into play in 2023.
And what would this move from Total E? I missed.
Everything. So this actually would probably be more like following Bella Vista into the new North Star software that they are utilizing now. It gives a lot of different capabilities that we do not have currently. Just for a small, simple example, Totally has one web developer on staff right now, and this other company that is being looked at has 45. So when we're needing to make a change, things will actually be executed along with some other capabilities that just aren't there.
As bad as what we've called partially is for golf, it's the same for accounting, even though it was touted as being wonderful.
We'll go out to market.
Interesting.
So one,
What's your thoughts on all that?
yeah, one suggestion, having been an IT guy in a previous life, the thing that will eat your lunch when you make an IT transition is the historical data port and data validation. So if you go down an alternate path, you need to make sure whatever, if you put somebody under contract, that you've got something in there about what they're going to do for validation of data when they port the legacy data, because there's a tendency on the part of lazy IT people, because I used to be one, to just dump the data over, and if I get 92 or 93% accuracy in the data, I call it good, and that craters your business.
It's not a fun task that I would be looking forward to.
No, it's a very frustrating, very tedious thing to do. But it's really the driver with a successful transition from application to application. If the underlying data doesn't come across clean, the result is a train wreck.
Well,
Yes.
there's that, and then there's training.
Yes, also true.
So I got point of service, but where's the training and all that kind of stuff to be able to make the transition happen without upsetting property owners?
It would be very involved.
Is it included in this?
My understanding is kind of what we're looking at, and I have not been able to do the deep dive into it yet, but is Bella Vista, it costs them roughly $400,000 to fully execute the transition. So that is what we're basing it off of.
John Paul?
I've been through 5 transitions, and they're all a nightmare. And to tackle this on our own, nobody wanted to do it. But we've got a roadmap with Bella Vista. They've gone from what we have to what this is. And Paul looked at it endlessly down the road, and he came to me, he said, we got to do this. And for Paul Moore to say that is incredible, number one. But there's nothing that we're going to jump into. We've got a roadmap with Bella Vista, and we'll use it. And they've already, Stephanie had a very good relationship with the general manager up there, and he's agreed to let us in on every phase of it all along the way, just to see how they transitioned from that. And it's every phase of the operation. It's not just golf. It's everything except for utilities. And they did the same thing with utilities, but there's a utility program they're using that fits with it perfectly. So that's the whole genesis and impetus of this move. What we have now is not working. We have to go to them for every change we make, and they can hold us up and charge us anything they want to charge us. With the new system, we'll be able to do most of it in-house. We won't have to rely on them to program it for us. So that's the impetus of what's going on. I won't take any more time.
I have a question about that. This is like pure cosmetics and PR. When we do this, if we do the assessment increase, how much expectation is there that it will be spent on, quote, infrastructure, as opposed to this stuff which may not be looked at as infrastructure? I mean, at the end of the day, I understand we need it. We can probably find other places to put it, but it's just, is there a barrier to expectations?
Well, I think one of the benefits of, one of the justifications of including this in version 2 is one of our overall goals is to improve our current technological standing. So I think it really drives us in that direction, both on how we're able to deliver things to the customer as well as what it does inside the office.
I would think there's an argument to be made that that is infrastructure.
Well, there is, but we've never really defined it, and so people just have it stuck in their head.
You're right.
Their own definitions of infrastructure.
Well, terms are funny that way. You say a
Yeah.
common term and everybody has a different definition of the term.
Yeah.
The other thing is the excavator that is for the new crew in the streets, so that is addition as well. So those highlighted green items were your V2 increases along with the $30,000 for the right-of-way contract under the mowing and $40,000 for the forestry plan.
What's that one?
So that's under the common property as well, and we took it out of version 1. It is where they are wanting to be able to get a consulting plan put together on the best way of selling off the timber and working it through that way. I know they've worked with a couple of the people on the Public Service Committee that are trying to push this. Jason, you may be able to speak to that a little bit more as well. The $40,000 that you guys had requested for the common property forestry plan.
So for the forestry management plan, what that's going to entail is hiring a forestry consultant that will come in and evaluate all of our forest lands, put it into a GIS database that we can value it, and schedule it for thinning or harvesting in a planned program manner. Once that's set up, we're done with the consultant. Now it's just our in-house staff and our committee will execute that plan. But initially, we need to get that started, and we're estimating $30,000 to $40,000 to get that forestry management plan into a condition where we can execute it.
Is this offset by forestry sales next year?
It could be. It could be. And so I think we put a token $20,000 in revenue in just for starters. We haven't done this in years, and the market just crashed on timbers. If we were to harvest today, I think we'd be getting like $12 a ton. That's nothing. Not even worth doing it yet. So it's conditional on market values, but being ready for when the market is good, like it was last year and early part of this year. If we had, we were shelf ready to execute a harvesting plan when the market value is right, then we can maximize our investment and our return on that. And I need a plan. We need a plan to do that. Make sense?
Is there a local university that has a forestry program?
We've got forestry consultants out there Wazoo here in Arkansas.
Yeah.
And we do have, several that we're starting to reach out to and get to know a little bit. And we actually have 2 professionals on our committee, but getting it into a plan, a GIS system, where we can carry that plan on for numerous years and update things as we go and be responsible stewards of our forests. I need a good start.
My only point there is grad students are usually really, really sharp and they work really cheap.
We can try that. You get what you pay for sometimes.
Yeah, you do. You do. I used to love young engineers, though, because they'd fix problems that they didn't know they couldn't fix. Until they stayed with the company for 2 years and got indoctrinated in our policies.
And it may be not just a one-time event. We may have a continued relationship with this consultant for, annual updates or 5-year updates and things like that. So you kind of want to have a team player that might be a long-term team player in the mix.
Did we cover all the other high items in common property and forestry?
I believe we got it all. I'd have to go back and double check. No, because I did, I went through and picked up all the high items that were missing last weekend. I'll confirm it, but I'm pretty sure I got it all. So those are the asset items, along with the two expense items that were mentioned. The other adjustment that was put in here, and you guys can tell me what you think. So I did go ahead, so I'll back up. Originally, we were asked to put the entire amount of the golf bunkers in. That was not coverable. However, in order for us to try to stay ahead of the salaries situation, and we know it's not an immediate recovery, what I did in version 2 was I did propose increasing the COLA from the 3% to 3.5%. And the reason for that is because right now, in version 1, we're looking at our base pay of $11 being moved to, I think it's $11.22. If we do it in this format, that bumps us up to $11.55 as a starting pay. So that hopefully by 2024, we could be at a $12 starting range. So while, like I said, it doesn't address everything immediately, it is more than what we have typically had, but we're trying to kind of pace ourselves to at least get $1 ahead before the next minimum wage increase comes out on us. That being said, this also includes 14 new positions. That's 1 admin, that is a safety officer to address all of our workman comp and other issues that we're experiencing. It is highly needed, especially with the number of accidents that we currently have on the books. Along with 1 compliance officer being added, 4 public utilities.
What's the compliance officer?
Compliance officer?
Yeah, I'm just
Or-
trying to track
they're the
where
one-
that came from and all that kind of stuff.
They are the permitting and inspections people, and my understanding is right now they're stretched extremely thin. They're asking for 1 extra head count in order to stay on top of going out and doing all their inspections and so forth. So that was put in version 2.
So we have how many total in compliance that go do that today?
I might be fibbing if I told you, but I think it's a total of 2 or 3.
3? So this would bring it to 4?
But it's 2.5. One was part
In the last 2 years, you've gone from 65 or 70 homes to 100-ish plus.
We're looking at 135 by year end.
Not to mention all the other stuff that goes on.
Okay.
4 public utilities positions, 7 public work positions. So that's between the streets and the common property and all of that.
So again, the public works at 7, so there's,
The 4 for the added crew and streets.
yeah,
There's 1 for the administrative side of it. And then there was 1 more for grounds or common property. Because I've got it all in here.
You got 3 that are coming off sanitation.
Yes.
You know, moving.
Well, that's why,
They
it would have
should
been a
have been in
total of
V1 though.
17, but it's 15.
Yeah, they should have been in V1, not V2. So they were
What?
coming, the sanitation folks, right?
They're gone out of both versions.
Yeah. Yeah, they were handled in version 1, so if you're looking at V2 deltas, they were already taken care of.
So one part-time position's being added in Lakes. 5 moved from the street department, and then adding 1 additional for the common property and forestry for a total of 6. Fleet doesn't have any changes due to version 2. That's stagnant. The building maintenance, they're adding 1 position in V2, that is the plumber technician. And then streets, they currently have 17 employees. 3 will be let go or moved or however, we'll leave it at that. Added 3 during 2021, so then 5 moving to the common property, and then adding the 4 new positions in version 2 for that new crew equates to your total of 15. So a net change of 2. And the oh yeah, I'm sorry. Streets did not have your sanitation. That's where these come out of from up here. So overall, 3 sanitation, the 1 fleet mechanic that was added in 21, the 4 new streets, plus 1 building, plus 1 common property position added in version 2. And that is your public works changes. Any questions on the public works ones?
No.
Where was I?
I stopped you at somewhere, so you got 1 in recreation?
Yes, there's 1 part-time recreation for the Coronado Fitness Center. So I also wanted to highlight $701,259 of this $1,412,000 increase over the prior year budget is due to these new positions. Not including the 5 positions that were added in version 1 because they are needed immediately regardless. So including all of those, it was an addition of $843,250 for added staff. So the remaining $569,264 is all related to salary adjustments.
Okay.
This $569,000 includes that 3.5% cost of living, the 1.5% merit for levels 1 through 4, and if you've been here less than a year. And then I did increase this one from the 2.5% merit to the 3% merit. Just trying to stay, like I said, a little bit competitive. It's our levels 5 and above that we're having the most trouble retaining. Levels 1 through 4 are hard to hire in the first place. 5 and above, it's just getting harder to retain. So I did put that in. You guys can tell me if you want me to kick it back out. But like I said, you're looking at $570,000 overall for the increases, and the other $850,000 is due to the headcount change.
So make sure I've got my head around it. So the 569, I get the 800 and the 14 new heads. So the 569 is total salary adjustment across all the staff in V2.
Yes.
Is that in addition to what was done in version 1?
That includes version 1 plus.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So if we went with version 2, your overall increase is that 569.
Okay.
So let me see if I still have it up.
Yeah. So in V1, it's probably more like 450, 460, 470, something like that.
Hopefully it won't mess up on me here.
Still trying to fill out my table. That was one missing link I had.
So right here, with the added 5 head count, you are at 608,000 increase with those 5 new positions. So if you were to back those out, you're looking at a, what, $200,000-$300,000 increase.
How much, I'm sorry?
A $200,000 to $300,000 increase. I'd have to do the math real quick to.
Okay. So in V1, you've got about $300,000 of salary impact from the cost of living adjustments, merit, salary bumps for police and firefighters. And then if you go to V2 of the budget, it's 569 for the total.
Without any new headcount
Yeah,
across both
not counting,
versions,
not
yes.
counting the head count, yeah, just the,
It's 269 total, or it's 569 above the 300?
Say that again.
Okay, version 1 was a 300,000 increase for salaries.
Somewhere in there.
And the
yeah.
569 in version 2 is in addition to that, so it's 8-something
It's
total?
inclusive.
It's inclusive, okay.
so it's about
Just to be-
300 on V1 and another 270. and
Yeah,
V2.
there's about another 200 to do the rest of the bumps.
Okay, kind of got it.
Which, like I said, then puts us at a starting pay for our $11 an hour positions at $11.55. Version 1 puts us at $11.22.
So how does that compare to the market survey information that Kim generated?
This was all discussed with Kim. Like I said, that's where we're trying to come to the $12 an hour base pay by 24.
And she pointed out on that there, if you don't do it this way, there'd be a huge jump in 2024 that we'd have to get to get to the minimum wage.
Are you making an assumption of a minimum wage increase?
Yeah.
You're making an assumption.
Well,
Just to make sure I'm thinking right, I'm looking at version 2 being 980,000 more for compensation. This is just a consolidated. So that would actually be, we're paying 980, okay.
Well, your numbers have changed a little bit since the version I sent last night. I did have a couple of corrections. I had somebody in at $60 an hour, and it's now $60 an hour. So I fixed that one. And then I still had an extra head count that was no longer needed, so I've removed that piece. So this version has been updated since what I sent you guys.
But basically, in version 2, it's 569 for increases, and then roughly somewhere around 411,000 for new people.
Well, you have a total of, it's 701,000 for the people that are in version 2 and not in version 1.
Okay,
And it's 843,000 overall if you include all new headcount across both versions.
but the 701,000.
So it's 14 plus 5, so 19 positions equals your 843,000.
19 new positions.
Correct.
No, okay. I think that was my question.
It's just 5 are in version 1, 14 are in version 2.
Okay.
Your version 1 includes 2 on the utility side. Without the increase of stuff, they're needing 2 people for some responsibilities that were shifted and they're behind, so just trying to be able to accomplish what they need to. An addition of an accounting staff, just so we can breathe a little bit. And then, I have to go back and look, I don't remember who the other 2 are off the top of my head.
Well, I'm just kind of thinking from a presentation standpoint, and again, this is from John Q. Public, which I consider myself one, and rather than kind of all the detail, to me, the things the public will ask about. I know this is a board presentation, not the public, but I think there's a degree of potential salesmanship in this presentation also. And those changes, the salary, the staff salaries in particular, will be something that is really explored a great deal. And so the more detail, I'm we needed somebody in accounting. We need 3 of you, not even 1.5, which we'll have with the new person. But I think they're fully justified. It's just, when I looked at, compensation going up 980,000 of 2 over 1, it's like, whoa, that's not capital. Now, and that's why the justification for it needs to be there, in my opinion.
And part of that is, you gotta realize you still need to invest in your human capital, because if we don't retain our current employees, you're gonna have money to do stuff, and it's all just gonna be sitting there, because everybody else is not gonna be here.
Yes.
And so that's why, I can back it out, I can go back with just what we had in version 1. Like I said, it's roughly the $200,000 or so for the additional increase. And then the rest of it is your staff, but.
I have
It's
no
a balancing
problem
act.
with any of it. It's just the appearance of it, to me, is if you just look at the big numbers. I look at, I don't remember what it was, I think the consolidated overview, that's about as much detail as I can handle. And again, I don't think I'm that dissimilar from some of the detail. Just explaining the big ticket items, I feel is incredibly important. Maybe Larry will do this in this summary.
Well, and that's why I
But
tried to
it's-
outline how many positions and where they were going.
Yes.
And the cost difference, so that when you guys are looking at that 1.4,
Exactly.
honestly, 19 head count is quite a bit.
It's, and well needed, because as you said, we can throw money at it, but if we don't have people to do it, it's not. But I'd like to see something that just presents that more understandably to financial dummies. Because I am one. For what it's worth.
Yeah, I think this is a place where we're presenting accurate data, and we're presenting good rationale for the data, but there's gonna be a crowd reaction.
Absolutely.
And I think regardless, there's gonna be a crowd reaction.
Well, 11 out of 14 of those are in the areas where we're trying to get more stuff
Oh,
done.
that's it, I have no I'm with Kathy, I have no argument on the head count, I have no argument with the rationale, anything like that. I think
Well, I'd be happy to throw in, hey, here's what your average pay is. It breaks down to this, so while your number looks
Yeah.
ginormous, but I think that's been kind of beaten
Yeah.
in a lot already.
Yeah, I think there's gonna be a reaction among some folks regardless. But I still believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but even in the V2 budget, total staff has actually gone down.
Yes.
Pretty significantly.
You're
You know,
still down
courtesy
11
of the food and beverage folks departing the pattern.
You're still down 11, and your overall percentage change is 7.6.
Yeah. And that includes,
That
that includes the additional, the staffers that you're bringing back. I mean, a lot of the food and beverage folks were, if they were waiters and waitresses, chances are were not paid minimum wage. They were paid whatever the current mandates are for that sort of thing, plus tips. So you shed lower salaried people and you picked up a few higher salaried people, and it did end up in an upper, but not a huge upper. And I think to your point, Kathy, I think that's kind of the way to message that
Yes.
is yes, there's a staffing increase. There's a net staffing reduction. The total compensation's gone up because you're changing the skill mix of the people in your team.
Yeah. And if they see that it's going to, from the village standpoint, anything, I don't know the grades, but everyone, the narrative will be assumed, and the crowd and next door people will say it's all going to upper management. And if anything can show, there's 14 new people, and they're all grade 5 or less, or whatever it is, I think it goes a long way towards satiation, but maybe not. But
I think
that's my thought.
that's a good point. The people that you're adding, and maybe that's the data point that you carry, is the people that you're adding Or from what salary grades?
Most
You know,
of
you're
these
gonna-
are a 5 through a 9.
Yeah.
I have to believe
Yeah.
one of them is a 10. One of the changes, we moved a position out of a particular department and put it into admin, based upon an assumption of assistant GM.
Yeah.
Possibly. So there was a little bit of an adjustment there, so I think, but other than the safety position that we would like to bring on, which honestly, we've just had another final accident, we're probably about to go back under Rule 32. If we don't do something to address this issue, it's gonna cost us a whole lot more than a person's salary in the end.
Got it.
So my recommendation would be is that this is gonna be so scrutinized by the community that you have to have more detail than you have here. You can't say public utilities. You need to say specifically
Oh, I
what
can-
position and what pay grade they are.
I can do all that.
I think
It's
you,
listed.
you can't generalize anything in this area. You're just asking for people to say, you're just padding the books again. You're going right back to the way we were before. And all those things will be assumed because you gloss over it and don't get into the details. If I was getting the details, I'd have a lot more detail here.
But the main thing is it tied to what we're trying to do with the infrastructure.
Exactly.
If we weren't trying to do this with the infrastructure, we wouldn't need that in personnel.
That's why I say you can't just say public works, because people don't know what public works is. You need to say, hey, it's for street crew at pay grade, whatever, to do the culvert program or whatever. If you don't do that, then people will go, I don't know who those people are, and then the
And why we
assumptions
need
will
'em.
become more problematic for the board and everybody else.
I can add that list of positions to the bottom of this particular spreadsheet.
I think that'd be
I
good.
think that'd be great.
Well, and I think what you just said about the safety officer is a great soliloquy for why you're hiring someone at salary grade 10 position. Yeah. Otherwise you're gonna end up with additional scrutiny and additional cost, and that's not how you wanna spend the village's money.
But overall, are you guys okay with the increases that we've proposed here?
So the only other question I have is, okay, so you and John Paul were talking about, your plan to get us to a specific point by 2024. What is that point?
$12 an hour starting instead of our $11 an hour base pay.
Okay, so how does 3.5% COLA and merit factor into that?
Well, that's where I said, if we do the 3.5 COLA along with, and that's excluding the merit piece of it, because the merit comes upon with your tenure, if you've been here a year. So if we're just saying somebody off the street to come in and start, it brings that base to $11.55 an hour.
Okay, so what are you gonna propose in '23?
It would probably be more back in line it'd be less than this, I would honestly assume. But it helps us transition. And right now, we're at a point, and all the directors can speak to this, I'm sure. We're having a retainage issue problem. So if we're able to do something now, while we can address some of the other issues and they work hand in hand, I think we're not gonna need to make near as big of an adjustment next year. We could probably go back to just a 3% COLA and a 1 or 2% merit across the board and leave it that way. We're just trying to slowly move the pendulum.
I understand what you said, but again, here's where I think the details matter. If your target is in 2024 to be here and you're here, what does this step look like? What's the next step gonna look like, and how do I get there? So that people understand, not only where we're trying to go.
Well, with this step, if this goes through, we're pretty much halfway there. So another year to 2 years, depending on where it comes into play and what gets approved in, I think it gets us to that point where we've pretty much cut it in half almost, a little more than half.
We'll stair step it for you.
At 3% increases every year, in 3 years, you gain $1 on $11 an hour per employee. So if you had $11 an hour, 3 years from now, at 3% annual increases, he's right at 12, or she's at right at 12. Just doing COLAs. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't think it's the math as much as the intent and the why the intent. You know, the intent is, yeah, the minimum wage is $11 an hour, but the bottom line is you can't hire anybody for $11 an hour. That's really the reality of the world right now. And so, like it or not, we're going to have to adjust the village compensation structure to be able to hire and retain people. And even though that means the village minimum salary levels may increase above what the minimum wage is, that's what you see coming. And I think that's really the messaging that needs to go to the crowd.
And then the note that we put in on the administration tab, because that's where it involves the HR side, is HR increase compensation through cost of living adjustments and potential merit increases in order to be competitive in a tight labor market. While it's not all the frivolous detail, I mean, it sums it up. If we don't compete, they're not going to be here.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean we can go and offer, $20 an hour just because Joe Blow down the road is. But I think if we're undercutting ourselves compared to everywhere else.
Yeah. Well, I think, like I said, I think the real message there is the intent is that over a period of 2 or 3 years, whatever that time window is, the intent is to raise the minimum salary of all positions in the village. I'm assuming all full-time positions in the village to $12 an hour. I'm assuming the part-time positions are staying at 11, but maybe I'm wrong.
We applied it across the board.
Okay.
Now, that may be something that could be looked at
Okay.
a little more.
Minimum wage is gonna go up. It's going to. There's just no doubt about it. And we, even if it doesn't, we've got to be competitive because we're losing them now.
Well, it's really
John Paul, the
latter.
only thing I would say is that I would not make the statement that the minimum wage is gonna go up, because that crystal ball, we do not have.
You're right.
What we do have is that we can't compete with the local community. That you can sell, and that is true, and that stuff. So I think it's important that we say it a specific way. Otherwise, you're making an assumption that you can't validate. But we can validate that we cannot pay competitive wages from outside the gates. We can validate that.
Do we know how many people we've lost in the last 12 to 18 months and because we're not paying $1 more? I mean, I know that some people
Can't
leave
do
a
the
job
second
for
part.
50 cents, right? But do we have any statistics that would show, because I think it'd be helpful if you could say, over the last year, we've lost, 15 people.
HR did a
And they've left for less than $1 an hour.
Yeah, we've got that.
If we have that kind of, you don't think that would help?
No, I'm saying we don't have the data. What we have is how many people left. We give voluntary surveys to people when they leave to say why they left. Not everybody fills them out, so we have very incomplete data, and the data that we do have does indicate that, but it's not statistically significant.
Okay, so you couldn't say we've lost X number of people, of which so many of them said this was the reason we
We
left.
can, but you won't like the number.
Okay.
So if I say we lost
What you're saying, it
100
doesn't prove-
people,
it doesn't prove the
and
point.
6 people filled out the survey and say they left for money,
Yeah.
what do you think?
Yeah, it doesn't prove the point.
It's not gonna be the
Yeah.
smoking gun that you're looking
Right,
for.
right. And then maybe we could talk about how many positions we have open that we are unable to fill at the current.
That you can.
That you can
is all
definitely
there.
talk about.
If
Yeah.
we just showed the number of people who have quit year by year, would there be a big increase?
You've
in-
had a 60% of your 1 year and less new hires have already walked out the door.
60, and what would it have been in, say, 2020?
I don't know what the history was. I just know what Kim has pulled together just a week or two ago as far as the stats regarding all that.
That seems phenomenal, and yet, with part-time people, sometimes there's a transiency anyway. If it was 20% the year prior and ran at 25% for the last 3 years, 60% is very significant.
I think
But-
she does have those numbers, I just don't recall what they were, but I think it was an increase.
Like I said, I'll come back to the observation that the numbers are what the numbers are. That's not really the concern. The real thing there is I think you need to be real clear about we're not able to hire and retain at $11 an hour. You know, that is just a fact of life. And in order to position ourselves to be more competitive, you're in a multi-year program to take yourself up to a $12 an hour minimum pay level. You know, because that looks like what's going to be the minimum needed, and maybe have to be more than that, but that's the best that the crystal ball will tell us now is needed to be able to go forward. And if people want to squawk the data, I mean, yeah, you know, the 60% of the 1 year or less hires leaving, you know, that's an insane turnover rate, unless you're on a cruise ship or something like that. I mean, that's a scary number, you know. So you'd have a couple pieces of data if somebody wants to question it, but the real key is not so much what are we doing, but why are we doing it?
Well, I'll just give you an example. I had somebody in our department, this individual lasted roughly 3 months. They have recently left us, and what they said was, it is not enough pay for how hard I am expected to work. And they were done. When we're short-staffed, when we have all of these things that are going on, your staff is working their tail end off trying to get stuff executed and taken care of, and you get to that point of being wore out and so forth. And so when they're kind of dealing with that, and then they come back with, you know, I'm making $12 or whatever it is an hour, and this is my workload. Okay, I'm going to Walmart.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes it a whole lot easier to jump out for that extra 50 cents or $1 an hour, and a lot less mental strain. Okay.
You know, that's probably not a bad data point to know. What did Walmart pay? If you walked into Walmart and got a job, is that $12 an hour, $13 an hour? Plus it comes with benefits. Right? So, I mean, I don't know. I'm just trying to say, for
I've heard it's
the average
What it
villager
is.
can relate to
Yes.
the people that they work with at Walmart.
I think
6
there's-
months ago, we knew that it was around $15 an hour.
Okay, so even if we go to what we were talking about, we're still paying less than they can go up to Walmart. and get a job.
Absolutely.
I think that's a,
Or open and close at McDonald's.
I think
They're
that's a
$15
compelling
an hour.
statistic.
And they don't get a bonus for doing it. How many places do you see are offering some pretty nice-looking bonuses for new hires?
Right.
Yep.
Now, our benefits are generous, and I'm not sure, McDonald's, I don't think has them, but Walmart generally does, I believe.
Depends on whether you're hired full-time or not, but yeah.
That's true. Okay,
But I think the bottom line on it is I don't think there's an issue with the head count. I don't think there's an issue with the salary realities associated with the head count. I think it's more just how you present the data and how you present the salary increments to.
I'll do a breakdown that shows version 1, version 2, every position added, and what the overall price adjustment is, so that way you can see it from start to finish. And then maybe we can have some kind of a commentary on the bottom that relates to the two facts of, one is we've got to be able to compete, and two is we need the added staff in order to execute
Yep.
the added project.
Absolutely.
If I interpret this right, version 1 pretty much follows what Kim showed us in July.
Yes.
If this is done for version 1, these increases increase the average hourly rate for the employees 60 cents over everybody.
Sounds about right.
Now, that's not much.
No.
We're still a long way from where we need to be. But this is version 1.
Yeah, makes sense.
Well, like I said, that's why I did go ahead and put a small addition in version 2. If you guys want to chew it up and spit it back out, I'll do that. I just,
That's all right.
I think it's good and needed, it's just explaining it is the difficult part.
and I will remove the bunkers. I will find, honestly, I don't know that I need to find another $250,000 worth of repairs. Coming, I will fill some of that for repairs, capital, whatever the case is. But I probably will not fill all of it because we still need to have a little bit of a cushion
Just
because
in
we're
case.
all depending on
Yep.
today going according in order to fund tomorrow.
Yeah, we're all betting the come.
So,
Yeah.
is there anything else that you guys saw that you have an issue with or a question about that I need to work on tonight?
I can't think of anything.
Is the way that I structured the first few pages, was that more helpful or more confusing? For me to go in and put these, for example.
I think that's good.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, the other big change was just in, that's not a good one to be an example. All of here, so they would kind of just summarize what the capital projects were. So I went ahead and outlined every piece of capital that belongs to that department. So it made the packet a little bit longer for a few pages, but I think it's helpful. Any
People
thoughts?
can't say they didn't see the data.
So Karina, can you go to the very beginning? That's the goals one. Is the budget guidance one on there too?
No, you guys sent it to me in PDF, so I PDF'd it into my PDF. Let me bring it up.
Nested PDFs, how does that, don't even want to know.
Oh, it was Word document, I had to convert it.
Okay.
Oh, that's the wrong one. No, that's the right one.
Looks like it.
Except I took the word draft off in my
Yeah.
packets.
That's not the one that's in your packet that you sent us.
What do you mean? It's only one I see. Let's see. Budget guidance draft.
There you go.
There.
There we go.
So I
See, it
got-
was PDF.
I got three quick questions for you on this one. So the baseline will assume that the frat option one, I think it's the board's recommendation, not the frat anymore.
Yeah.
So-
I just copied, so thank you.
Yeah, I understand.
Thank
I'm
you.
just trying to,
No, it's a-
that's
it's a-
why I'm
it's a-
getting
Yes.
this.
It's a timing thing.
And then the next one is that you go down there to the next bullet, it talks about the OMT will be updated to 2028 and moving unbudgeted items into, I think that should be 2023 to 2028, not 22, the next one up right there. That's
Yeah.
a 3, not a 2. And then down in revenue, you said frat recommendation again, that would be board.
Okay.
Yep, right there.
And then under maintenance, and this is just a question for the whole group, but it says focus on high priority repairs and maintenance of existing facilities. Less on expansion or no expansion?
Well, we do technically have two things that were being expanded as far as adding a bathroom for the 30 employees out of the street department for the one toilet. That would be an expansion. And then the storage for the fleet. But I don't think of them as an amenity or a frivolous type of,
Yeah.
I don't know, just to me, wording there matters a lot, and how you say that, might need to think about whether or not you're
What y'all
how you convey it to the community, because they'll read this first page and,
You could say high priority maintenance of existing facilities, plus adding one toilet for the 30 people. And no, I'm serious. I mean, you know,
Or we're coming to your house.
I mean, we're not putting in a water park,
Yeah.
Yeah,
right? So,
yeah.
and then the only thing I would just throw in here, and this is again for the group, but under maintenance, you had, and I'll just go down to, where did I pull it from? So actually, right below, under marketing, it says focuses on measuring effectiveness of spending, identify the objectives, measure of success. Wouldn't we want that same thing for maintenance and other things too? We want the same, that's kind of what you were getting at early on, Larry, about metrics for, if we're gonna, this is how much money we're gonna set aside, what are we getting for it?
Yeah.
So I think that applies almost to everything, but anyway, I just throw that out.
Might
I just threw
copy
that
paste
out,
that
just-
bullet. Yeah,
Yeah.
doesn't hurt.
That was the only thing, I just saw those when I read through those real quick.
Okay. Tom, I believe you sent this last version. Would you mind sending me a Word copy and I will update it? Thank you.
And that's only just because things have changed in the,
Yeah.
since we gave it to
Few,
you.
few weeks went by and the
There's cleanup.
scent's changed.
And then just, if you go to the other documents, we had talked before about whether or not the golf surcharge is a reserve or not. Did we ever resolve that as a group or as a staff?
I went through and I replaced all of the verbiage that said
Golf reserve to
reserve.
golf
Where's it
surcharge.
at?
Yeah.
Oh, it would be down here. So I put just golf surcharge funds.
Okay.
Okay.
And then I also removed the wording, retained earnings, because that's not how anything's identified, and put non-executed funds.
Yep.
I also removed the wording of rollover, and I changed it to carryover, because you're still gonna have to carry it over. One way or another, however you word it.
Yeah.
So it looks like row 64, you may still have a rollover. I don't know if that was intentional or not.
Oh, yeah, there's two of them.
Yeah, there's search and replace or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I may have done it on version 1 and missed part of version 2. It's like I said, I made a bunch of changes and I lost all my changes yesterday. So I had to try to backtrack.
So there's something broken in the house, either whatever you threw to the ground or whatever you threw through the TV.
I lost all of IT's budget and allocations and all the adjustments I've made all week, so it wasn't a pretty sight
Nope.
at my house yesterday morning. But we got it back.
I imagine cats, dogs, kids, and husbands were hiding under the bed at that point.
And just to recap, the way version 2 caps off, I'll make that adjustment for the bunkers. With the bunkers included, we only had $79,000 wiggle room outside of utilities.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm saying I'll probably leave most of that back in as a buffer.
Yeah.
And then we're looking at $567,000 left from utilities. And then the $491 to go over to the golf surcharge.
Okay.
And that's what we're looking at. Both reserves will be fully funded as of the end of this year. The board will approve first quarter of next year, so there's no additions for those.
Yeah.
We'll readdress those when we get to them.
Okay.
Yeah, so just right there where you were, this is just something, when you intermix golf surcharge between two reserve funds, it just, the way it
Well-
comes across is it just one thing.
Yeah,
It's no pet peeve of mine, but
Well, and they were originally considering it like a reserve, and that's where it got all grouped in, so I need to do some cleanup.
Yeah, I just think about the policy we just wrote and stuff, doesn't talk anything about it, so I mean, just
And I,
trying to keep things pure. Because people look at this and they look at those as weird funds and.
and I'll actually need to move them on my consolidated overview sheet as well, because they're listed under reserve.
Right.
But then I've got the 2 capital accounts under unrestricted capital funds, so I'll realign that.
Okay.
Okay.
Did the outside contract for recreation for maintaining lands and stuff, is that still in here?
Yes. That's how I did not add 2 additional headcount side of the contract in.
Can we go back to version 1?
Mm-hmm.
The, kind of the high-level summary, the one that starts with gross revenue, bad debt expense.
Not the version 1. Where you want me to go?
The page that looks like this. It's right below the division
That one right
summary.
there.
That's it. Okay. I look at the capital budget of 8.5 million and the lines, immediately below that, which are the capital funds utilities and the capital funds general. I just kind of feel that the capital budget's a little aggressive. In particular, I've been waiting to use this.
Except for it won't show on a
Well,
TV.
it won't show
Yeah,
on
we're working on
Okay.
TV. Nice try, though.
Nice try. The,
When that happens.
yeah, I hate when that happens. When you look at the excess deficit before depreciation, it's 4.4 million. 3.5 of that is from utilities. So the rest of it is like 800,000. So you really don't have much wiggle room entirely on the
Where are you looking at?
the 4.3 million excess deficit before depreciation.
Oh, up here, okay, yeah.
I think 3.5 of that is from utilities, which means the rest of the organization is 0.8. I just feel that, I like cash, what can I say?
Well, it is stretched, and that's, like I
Okay.
said, coming back to that point
Yeah.
of, there's not much wiggle room.
Yeah, I know. it's
But at
just-
the same time, I was almost afraid if I didn't try to spend most of what was in there that we truly felt we would be able to accomplish,
Right.
it'd also give that appearance that we're saying we need money, but yet we're just gonna stockpile it.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
why.
yeah, and I'm
I took
looking
this
at the,
approach.
down below it.
We've heard
I
that
think you have-
before with the concept of reserve funds in general, not necessarily because of people who understand the concept of reserve funds, but they just see money and go, well, why aren't we spending that?
Right. But the issue I have is version 1 assumes that version 2 does not pass.
That's correct.
Correct.
In which case, I'd feel better if I had more cash. If version 2 passes, then I don't care. Then we'll just live with it. I don't know, I mean, and as Karina points out, and if you go down like 3 or 4 lines, you see that 182,000 in capital funds general, that's your wiggle room, right?
That's my wiggle room.
That's just not a lot of wiggle room. That's,
Well, but in terms of wiggle room, as the year goes on, I'm assuming that we or someone's going to monitor
yes,
year-to-date actual versus budget and forecast versus
Yeah.
budget. And if it looks like that we are getting crushed because we don't have enough wiggle room,
Yeah.
then it seems like we adjust the budget
We
to
will.
create the additional wiggle room.
That's the
Correct.
same
I don't know
reason.
I don't know that you have to anticipate an entire year's worth of wiggle room in the initial budget, because the budget is the plan, and the plan, I assume, is a living document and not carved in stone when the POA approves it.
And this is where I need Larry and Jeff to give me a little bit of consultation. With the new upcoming policies, to what degree does that tie us or hamstring us? Does it put us additional pressure to make good on our promises and can essentially force us to spend the $4 million even though we may not want to? If that's not an issue,
So I'm not
then
sure.
that does create more wiggle room.
Well, so I'm not quite sure I understand the point, but let me try to talk to the policy point. So the way the policy that's in the board's hands now got written was for the articles that require special accounting treatment, which are predominantly things like streets, culverts, water, sewer, fleet, buildings, all that, all the usual suspects, pretty much all the stuff that was in this key measures table. Once the budget's established, it requires two things to happen to change those budget line items. And that would be a declaration of compelling need, which basically means something serious had to have happened, and a supermajority vote from the board to change those budget lines. Now, that said, I haven't gone back and done the math on exactly how much of the budget that is, but it's not 70 or 80% of the budget.
Okay.
So you still got a lot of operating lines, that this is maybe 15 or 20 lines out of a 3,000 line item budget. So you've got a lot of flexibility to be able to tap the brakes on something should you need to. You don't, for example, you wouldn't, let's say you have another son of COVID outbreak and all of a sudden everything crashes and burns, again. So you're shutting things down. So you can defer expenses, you can not backfill people who depart, you can do all kinds of things there that would get you all kinds of dollars, that wouldn't necessarily affect these critical items in the 22 budget year. And then in the 23 budget year, if you were still in that negative scenario, whatever that might happen to be, then you would establish your 23 budget based on what your fiscal realities were at the end of 22. So you'd make the same assumptions that we've been making about what we're going to have for revenue, what we're going to have from expenses, and try to figure out where those line items reset to. So long-winded way of saying, I don't think the policy and the earmarking policy and those impacts are going to unnecessarily restrict the board. They've still got the ability to control a lot of the budget the same way they have today. Did I screw that
I
up?
think the only thing I would add to that is that it basically goes to establishing minimum targets that we should be trying to achieve every time we do the budget in those areas. As the number one priority we do first, and then we'll do other things. And if we run out of money, then that's as far as we're gonna get.
But I think to help answer you in regards to this in particular is we do have to assign every dollar. We have to come back to a zero balance. So yes, I don't have a whole lot of my wiggle room, which is where, I've assigned some of those dollars. But every year in the past, and that's why you've always seen come summertime, they've put a halt on everything. And that's the whole reason I try to stress the importance of a spread in your budget and watching your cash flows. Because if we went out and executed all $8 million in capital, not that we could, but if we could, up at the beginning of the year, which is where they've tried to do some in the past. And I'm not saying I don't agree with trying to be able to get as much as you're able to when you need it. But if you go out and you spend all of this money, which is built into this assumption here, and then that money that you assumed doesn't come in, you have to make an adjustment, which puts us into the situation that you're talking about. So as you're stating, it's coming back to where are we trending, where are we tracking, where do we need to make some tweaks? It will not be to the high level important areas that are noted, but we'll still be able to make some adjustments to make sure that we don't go in the hole.
I think most likely those areas typically are salaries or hiring, which is kind of a slow way to do it. Where you just cut expenses, which is kind of painful.
The last 2 years, we've cut expenses in areas that we've had to, and I mean, and we've seen an effect of it. Yeah.
With 400 people, salaries give you a boatload of flexibility because you're going to have a probably 5 to 7% attrit rate at any given point in time. So when you, even though the salary levels aren't real high, you can manage a lot of your cash flow with timing of replenishment, staffing replacements. I used to make a lot of money in my old job on that particular trick.
And Tom, I guess the other part to that whole equation that you're asking is that, this becomes a budget, the budget gets approved. I mean, if we're gonna try and track metrics and stuff like that on how these things happen, we should have a better plan of when money is gonna get spent. Because not everything is gonna get spent in the very first of the year, because you can't do certain things at the beginning of the year that you're gonna plan to do in the summer or whatever. So of that money that is capital, you would think that it's gonna be executed over time, over the year, and we should know what's coming next. Okay, everything's looking good financially, let's go ahead and proceed with that. This is the next one after that, let's proceed with that, and that should flow out through the year. I mean, you don't typically pave streets in the wintertime because that's not the time to pave streets, so, there's not gonna be a lot of expenditure in streets, but other things can be going on while that's happening, and then when we get closer to the summer, we can start cutting those contracts. So I think that, that's what we've gotta have better visibility on as the months roll on in '22 about not only what have we done looking backwards, but what do we have coming forward so that we can manage that.
I think there's an opportunity. One of the things I didn't put in this deck, which I wanted to talk about anyway, were I see a couple of what I'll call opportunities going forward. And one of those opportunities is basically execution. It's been a weird couple of years with COVID and everything else going on, so it's a lot of extenuating circumstances. But it's difficult if you have $2 or $2.5 million of carryover funds from one year to the next. It becomes really hard to explain after a while. So then this kind of goes to Jeff's point about making sure we've got timed out when we're doing this stuff and how much money it's going to take and where's the cash flow situation, and making sure that we keep rolling those turn-ons all the way through the year. But make sure that we really get as much execution as we can in the current year's budget, and minimize the carryover into the following year's budget, if for no other reason, just the cost of materials is going to be higher next year, so you get more bang for the buck for current value. The other observation I had, and we touched on it in an earlier conversation, was, and I'll call it an opportunity at this point because I don't know what else to call it, but it looks like there's a lot of different parts of the organization that are dealing with grass, landscaping, trees, various and sundry things. Looks like there may be some opportunity there, and just because there's 168 structures and all the ensuing stuff is wrapped around them, maybe an opportunity there to consolidate some of that activity into one organization, consolidate some of the resources into one organization, get better leverage out of out of the dollars we're spending for doing some of that sort of thing. I think there's also a, you know, it would probably be enlightening, though not necessarily positively enlightening, if you listed all 168 facilities, buildings that we maintain and the grounds around them, and identified who maintained what, you know, or who thinks they maintain what, which may be different than who maintains it, you know. So there's probably need to put together that map and figure out where there's potential opportunities to consolidate. Like we had a situation the other day where there was, the fire department wanted a lawnmower because they were mowing their own yard. Well, that's okay. I mean, okay, they got the time, maybe that's not a bad thing, but, you know, at the end of the day, you know, is that the best use of your dollar to have the firefighter mow the yard? You know, so I would call those future opportunities that we need to look at as we go forward. So, didn't mean to distract the thread of conversation, but you gave me a window of opportunity. So, take a couple minutes and kind of talk batting order. I think, I don't know exactly what our time constraints are, but it sounds like it's a 2-hour time limit. So you definitely need to go first. Yeah. And then we come up behind. My objective, maybe foolishly, would be to have no more than 3 to 5 slides. You know, trying to keep it down to a small package. Kind of the first page I put in there, which I called budget process comments, I think kind of reiterates some of the key aspects of the budget. You know, and the biggest thing would be it doesn't take in version 1 of the budget. It doesn't take into account any assessment change other than the 5.8%. Version 2 of the budget does. Either way, in 2022, there isn't enough money to cover all the needs. That's just the reality of the situation. Yeah. So probably hit that item. Probably take the bulleted points and replace them with a table with what's probably a couple of pages of table, because I don't think everything fits on one page. It's getting pretty busy. And then maybe a slide at the end talking opportunities, you know, that we just discussed. So I'm trying to keep it in that 3, 4, 5 chart range. Try to get through it quickly, because if we're constrained on time, it'll have to be a fast step through anyway before the meeting time's up.
I was wrong about the agenda. I thought there were just 2 items, the budget and the budget priority.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a couple other items on there.
Mm-hmm.
Early order program, polling place discussion, strategic goals, and then the 2 we've been talking about.
Was there a meeting called immediately afterwards?
Yes,
And that one was at, I thought, 11 o'clock.
yes,
So that's the 2 hours.
So I got 2 hours.
Okay.
right.
But I think y'all called that meeting, so you may have some flexibility on closing time. But
So Larry, my only input to your slides would be, the table that you're talking about, goes more towards how do we measure the budget, which is really follow on. I like it, I like the idea. I think, you know, as Ford mentioned and others, I think we have to bring that up, but I think the bullets that you have on the previous slides, in the version that I have, I think talk to key points that I think we want to make. Maybe there's a few more that we make, but I think those are the ones that you highlight and when you get to the table, maybe the table is not fully fleshed out, but more representative of, following through on this budget, we need to measure it.
Yeah. I think if, whichever path, either the bullet points or the table, I think we go with one and leave the other.
Just because I didn't think in the time frame that you have available, I don't know that we can refine those metrics without
there
a
is-
fair amount of engagement with
Yeah.
Jason and others
Yep.
to get there.
Yep.
And it's not crucial to the board in their review, except for to put the bug in their ear that we need to probably help them put something together to track execution next year.
Yep, I'm good with that. Like I said, you can kind of go either way, but yeah, I share your concern about being able, I don't want to put something out there that's not fully formed.
Correct.
Because then
People would write it down and say, okay, that's what we're measuring.
Yeah.
And you go, no, that's not actually.
Yeah. Yep. Yep, okay. But the good part about the exercise of putting together those measures is it did give us data to be able to drive back into some of these other bullet points. So. Okay. So I would say to those of you out there, stay tuned. There'll probably be an iteration or two of this that go through the email system tomorrow. I'll have to ask Katrina's indulgence to send her a package probably close of business Tuesday, whenever business closes. So with that, ma'am?
If you're finished.
Yep. I think we're about to adjourn, so please, but use the microphone so the crowd can hear, all the folks who listen and hear what's going on. No, it's the recorded crowd.
Okay. Just a comment. You were talking about competitive wages in the community and whatnot. I would just caution you to be extremely careful about quoting the Walmarts and the McDonald's, because you will be fact-checked by the community, and you don't want to come out with some inaccurate or whatever. Just a caution. Thanks.
Absolutely.
That's a fair point. Well, I know Jeff has a photo from Panda Express that talked about what they paid. Somewhere in here, I have a photo from Waffle House.
Walk had a
Says-
sign on their door for 13 an hour.
Yeah, that says what they pay.
Panda Express had $13 an hour on their front door
Yeah.
yesterday when I got Panda Express.
Well, the wait staff at Waffle House only makes $2.50 an hour, but then they get tips, but they have stock options, paid maternity leave, time off, health benefits. You know, the grill operators start at, it says $10.50 an hour plus bonuses. I think this sign was actually in Tennessee, so that's clearly got to be $11 an hour in Arkansas. You know, stock options, maternity leave, paid comp, operations managers, 50 grand and up, et cetera, et cetera. So somebody has questions about what folks are paying, we can just show 2 pictures. All righty. Good point, though. Thank you. Unless anybody has anything else, I would move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.